Yemen rarely appears in travel conversations. When it does, it's usually reduced to one idea and then dismissed. But Yemen isn't defined by a single story. Because scattered across this country are places that feel unreal, ancient, and strangely untouched. Places that look like they belong somewhere else entirely. Not hidden, just rarely seen. And what exists here challenges assumptions about what old architecture can do, what isolation preserves, and how landscapes can shape civilizations in ways that feel impossible until you see them. Where cities grow up, not out. In the highlands stands a city that doesn't spread horizontally. It stacks. This is Sana'a, specifically its old city. Here's the shock. Buildings rise multiple stories high, constructed centuries ago from earth, stone, and wood. From a distance, it looks modern. Up close, it isn't. This isn't new architecture copying the past. It is the past, still standing. The facades carry geometric patterns traced in white gypsum. Each window placement follows rules established generations back. The proportions remain mathematically precise despite the absence of modern planning tools. Walk the narrow streets and something becomes clear. Density here wasn't accidental. It was engineered. The verticality wasn't aesthetic experimentation. It was spatial problem-solving frozen in time. When skyscrapers are made of mud, further east, the land flattens. And suddenly, a vertical city appears. This is Shibam. Here's what feels impossible. Towering buildings, up to 8 stories, built entirely from mud brick. No steel, no concrete, no modern reinforcement. This isn't symbolic architecture. It's functional. The city rises not to impress, but to survive floods, heat, and space limits. The Wadi Hadramaut floods unpredictably. Building upward meant staying above water. But there's more happening here. The mud brick walls aren't thin. At the base, they measure several feet thick. They taper as they rise, distributing weight naturally. What looks primitive functions with remarkable efficiency. The towers cast long shadows across packed earth streets. From certain angles, the silhouette resembles a modern skyline. Except this skyline is roughly 500 years old, and it still houses families. And then the landscape lifts sharply. The elevation changes everything. Where villages cling to mountains. In western Yemen, roads twist upward into steep terrain. This is the Haraz Mountains. Villages sit directly on cliff edges. Stone houses blend into rock. Here's the shock. These settlements weren't carved into the mountain. They were built with it. From a distance, it's hard to tell where the land ends and the village begins. The stone used in construction comes from the mountain itself. Same color, same texture, same weathering patterns. But the integration goes deeper than material choice. Roads weren't carved afterward. They emerged naturally between structures. The mountains here rise sharply from valley floors. Terraced agriculture wraps around lower slopes. Above that, villages appear like natural outcroppings. This isn't adaptation to landscape. This is architecture becoming landscape. The elevation provides natural defense. The stone provides camouflage. The terraces provide food. Everything connects. Nothing here exists separately from its environment. If you're interested in places where the environment shapes everything and architecture follows terrain instead of trends, subscribe. This channel explores destinations where the land sets the rules, where human presence doesn't dominate, it adapts, where the earth looks unfamiliar. Off the coast lies an island that feels disconnected from the planet itself. This is Socotra. Here's the shock. Much of the plant life here exists nowhere else on Earth. Dragon blood trees, alien-shaped vegetation, limestone formations. This island didn't evolve alongside the rest of the world. It evolved alone. That isolation shows in every direction. The dragon blood trees don't just look strange. They function strangely. Their umbrella-shaped canopies capture moisture from air. Their red sap has been harvested for centuries for medicine and dye. Their roots grip limestone in ways that seem structurally impossible. The beaches here don't match typical tropical coastlines. White sand meets turquoise water, but the backdrop isn't palms. It's plants that look extraterrestrial. The isolation happened millions of years ago, When Socotra separated from mainland Africa, its ecosystem split too. What remained evolved independently. Roughly 1/3 of the plant species here exist nowhere else. Several bird species are endemic. Even the insects develop separately. This isn't just biological uniqueness. It's evolutionary separation frozen in geography. The landscape carries an unfamiliarity that doesn't fade with time spent there. It intensifies. Because every plant, every formation, every ecological interaction confirms the same truth. This place developed its own rules. When caves feel untouched, Socotra isn't just strange on the surface. Below ground, limestone caves stretch deep and quiet. Here's what feels unsettling. Many sections remain barely explored. No lighting systems, no crowds, no interpretation signs. The landscape here doesn't explain itself. It doesn't need to. The caves formed through millennia of water erosion. Limestone dissolved slowly, creating chambers and passages. Some caves contain freshwater pools. Others remain completely dry. What makes them remarkable isn't their size. It's their emptiness. Walking through these spaces means navigating natural darkness. The silence has weight. There's no background hum of ventilation systems. No distant voices of tour groups. No carefully placed railings guiding movement. The caves exist in their original state. Stalactites hang undisturbed. Mineral deposits pattern the walls. The air tastes mineral-rich and ancient. This isn't abandonment. It's preservation through isolation. The caves don't need interpretation because they're not performing. They simply exist, accessible but not packaged, where absence defines the experience. Across much of Yemen, what surprises visitors most isn't what's present. It's what isn't. No heavy tourism infrastructure, no curated viewpoints, no constant guidance. Places exist without performance. The land doesn't advertise itself, it waits. There are no visitor centers explaining the significance of stone villages, no audio guides narrating the history of mud skyscrapers, no marked photo spots showing where to stand. The experience unfolds without mediation. Ancient sites remain part of active communities. Historical architecture still serves daily functions. Sacred spaces continue their original purposes. This creates an unfamiliar dynamic. The visitor arrives not as customer, but as witness. The places don't adjust themselves. They don't simplify their complexity. They don't translate their essence into digestible narratives. What you encounter is what exists, unfiltered, unpackaged, and often unexplained. That absence of infrastructure isn't neglect. It's a different relationship between place and visitor, one where the location doesn't perform, and the visitor doesn't consume. Why Yemen feels unsettling? Yemen doesn't compress experiences. It stretches them. Ancient cities remain lived in. Mountain villages refuse to move. Islands evolve in isolation. Nothing here feels temporary. That permanence is what feels unfamiliar. The world usually replaces things quickly. Yemen doesn't. The unsettling quality comes from confronting continuity. Buildings from the 16th century still house families. Agricultural systems established centuries ago still feed communities. Construction techniques passed down generations still raise new structures. There's no museum distance. The past isn't preserved behind glass. It's inhabited. This challenges the modern assumption that old means obsolete. Here, old means tested, proven, trusted enough to continue. The mud towers of Shibam still work. The cliff villages of Haraz still function. The terraced agriculture still produces. Nothing exists as demonstration. Everything exists as life. That continuity creates cognitive friction because most places separate past from present. They preserve history while living modernity. Yemen doesn't separate them. The ancient architecture isn't abandoned heritage. It's active infrastructure, and that challenges comfortable assumptions about progress, development, and what it means for something to be relevant. Yemen isn't defined by absence. It's defined by endurance. Cities that rise vertically, skyscrapers made from earth, villages balanced on cliffs, an island that evolved alone. These places weren't shaped for attention. They weren't shaped for speed. They were shaped to last. And they have. Through centuries of weather, use, and time, the shock isn't discovery, it's recognition. Recognition that remarkable doesn't require new, that sophisticated doesn't require modern, that unforgettable doesn't require packaging. Yemen's landscapes, architecture, and ecosystems persist not by resisting change, but by embodying principles that outlast trends. If this video changed how you think about Yemen, subscribe. Because some of the most remarkable places on Earth aren't hidden. They're simply still standing, still functioning, still inhabited, still teaching anyone willing to witness instead of consume.